Even as an organization of 10 people, if you're trying to recruit, bring new people in, you're trying to help people to work efficiently, you're probably trying to make use of AI tools and technologies. You're going to need to have a better handle on your data. Where is your information? Helping people to get started efficiently. Even small organizations are going to need to have something. If I was starting my own business and I was a team of one, having an intranet probably isn't justified. But if you don't have an office and everybody is hybrid work in your organization, having something to rotate around feels still very important for me.
No, you need to structure like your digital workplace, right? And then the internet helps with that, right? Provides the foundation.
Within the Advania UK business, we use Fresh as our homepage and as our intranet. That is generally the place that I go to get anything done. I don't know where our HR systems are. I've no idea what our expenses system are called because I don't spend any time thinking about it. I go to the homepage, I click on a link. While I'm there, I may be distracted by some piece of news or other information that has been the homepage. I don't spend any time thinking about this stuff. It's an extremely useful way of finding your way around the organization.
Action, isn't it? Well, it's fresh perspectives time, David. So welcome everyone. Yeah,
I wasn't ready for that.
But that's good. It's good. It's a good way to start like the new episode.
Yeah, I'm awake now.
You are. Everyone. So everyone listening to that, right? So you enter that like there's this big bang, and well, welcome. Well, it's a nice day today. It's still cloudy, but it's not that cold. Well,
it's cold here.
It's good.
No snow today. We did have some snow yesterday. Although I always feel bad saying that when we talk to Yarmo on meetings and they're 2 foot deep in snow.
Who is in Finland? Things are quite different. But like last week when I was in London, was it last week? I can't remember anymore. It was sunshine. I was quite disappointed. I have been like visiting London like for quite often now, and usually like it's rainy and cloudy. There was 3 days of sun. I was like, what's going on here?
That was summer. It's been and gone now.
It's gone now. Yeah, that was like all that you're going to get like for sun. Yeah. Awesome. So I'm Jarbas Horst. I'm a senior product manager for Fresh Intranet. And with me, I have
David Bowman, product director, still product director for Fresh Intranet. And today we're going to talk about the benefits of SharePoint intranets.
And are we focusing there like on SharePoint or intranets, like in the general sense, David?
Are we calling into question the kind of abstract purpose of intranets, or are we talking about SharePoint?
Well, let's start with intranets, and we go from there, and then we talk also about SharePoint. But like let's start like with a maybe a tricky question here, David. So can you imagine work for an organization that doesn't have an intranet? Now imagine you are like in a job interview, which will probably not happen with you. We need you here as like the project director, and someone comes and asks you like, or maybe you go there and ask like, do you have an intranet? Right. So can you imagine that situation?
Well, and they don't have one.
And they don't have one.
Well, I think it would probably be like a red flag for me, to be honest. I think if as an organization you can't be bothered or haven't had the wherewithal to set up even something pretty basic, right? A homepage with some links and a bit of information about the organization, I think it's probably reflective of other cultural problems in the organization because, it's not hard to do. It's a relatively low investment ultimately in the grand scheme of things to help people kind of navigate the organization, get orientated in your onboarding. And it feels like it's probably a given these days that organizations are going to have something for that. Maybe if the job that if the job that I'd gone for in this theoretical sense, it had been my responsibility to sort out an intranet, right? Maybe that would be an acceptable situation. But, I think otherwise it would be a pretty big problem for me.
I think the same, like, maybe if it's a very small organization, right? So that could be acceptable. and I'm talking like in here like 10 people, right? But like even I have worked for a company like that before, right? So you have like 10 people have been like in this organization for long, and you know where things are located and all of that. Now, when someone new comes in that organization, like even a small one, you get like the same questions. Where can I find the links and the documents?
And I think, even in pre-pandemic, right, when hybrid working was less of a thing, it was probably easier to get away as a small organization without having something like an intranet, right? Even like a very basic homepage. But I think now that, even as an organization of 10 people, if you're trying to recruit, bring new people in, you're trying to help people to work efficiently, you're probably trying to make use of AI tools and technologies. You're going to need to have a better handle on your data, right? Where is your information? Helping people to get started efficiently. I think, even small organizations are going to need to have something. I think if I was starting my own business and I was a team of one, having an intranet probably isn't justified. But I think beyond that, if you don't have an office and everybody is hybrid work in your organization, having something to rotate around feels still very important for me.
No, you need to structure like your digital workplace, right? And then the internet helps with that, right?
Yeah,
provides
yes.
the foundation.
Yeah, I think we've said, in other times, right, that within the Advania UK business, we use Fresh as our homepage and as our intranet, and that is generally the place that I go to get anything done. I don't know where our HR systems are. I've no idea what our expenses system are called because I don't spend any time thinking about it. I go to the homepage, I click on a link. While I'm there, I may be distracted by some, piece of news or other information that has been the homepage. But I don't spend any time thinking about this stuff. It's an extremely useful way of finding your way around the organization.
Yeah, but look, intranets can also have a bad reputation, right? So you gave a good example, right? So the way how we have our intranet with a homepage with a lot of information useful for employees, but they can also like have a bad reputation, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think those examples generally tend to be where the intranet's been in place for 5-10 years. It's unmanaged. Maybe the person that set it up left some time ago. Everybody moans about it. Doesn't really have any ownership. Or perhaps it's some old creaky technology, and there's passwords and usernames required to get into this thing, and isn't necessarily accessible very quickly.
And that's true. Like, we had a client the other day, and they came to talk to us, and they have an on-premise internet. So they have had that now like for I think 20 years. And they were saying like, no, younger workforce that come to work with us, they complain about it. The consumer application solutions, they are way ahead, right? So they're intuitive and if you have like this solution, imagine Facebook, right? Facebook, when it was launched in 2004, and if it would have not evolved, so that's maybe the situation that some organizations have, right? They have had the internets like for 10, 20, 15 years, and without like much progress.
The concept of poking people on Facebook maybe feels a bit more inappropriate in today's world.
But it's not also like about the technology, isn't it? Like, because you could also have like a new intranet, a new solution that's not delivering as well.
Yeah, and I think the best examples of intranets that we've seen in the the history we've been doing intranets is that there's a great leader, a great owner, an intranet manager that is they're the ones that are ultimately making a difference. The technology is an important consideration at the beginning, but a great leader, owner, someone that's in tune with the business, understands what people want, is doing a great job of curating content and listening to feedback and making adjustments, looking at analytics. Those people really make the difference. That and a great roadmap.
And like, so, as a product manager, roadmap for me tends to be features. And I think you have a good example that like it's beyond that, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be high gloss tech stuff that's on the roadmap, right? Launching chatbots every few days. That's not really the thing that you need to focus on. It may be adding more people into the intranet, right? A new team, a new business, an organization that's been acquired, adding content, decommissioning, some remote data store somewhere, bringing that content into the intranet, making some changes to the way search works, right? It can be small incremental changes, but that kind of continuous iteration of the intranet, I think makes a big difference for people that are using it.
Fully agree, right? We have clients like doing that right now, and we see like really good progress. As not just in terms of functionalities, like in case of Fresh, right? So we have like those 4 releases a year that they get, and they can like increase in terms of functionality, but also like getting feedback from the employees and then improving the internet accordingly. So that's really beautiful, like when that happens.
And there's a nice segue there, because I think a lot of what we're talking about is kind of the emotional side of intranets, right? And I think it's often kind of building business cases on the emotional side of intranets about what it means for new employees, the kind of narrative and stories around people getting benefits from having an intranet in place, but the kind of the facts and figures, right? So Microsoft published on their Work Trend Index this new performance equation, and I just thought pulling out a couple of statistics from this report, because the kind of the basic principles of what they were saying here is they analyzed more than 3 million employees at more than 200 companies across different industries, and looked at the stock price movement of those same companies throughout the year. And what they found was that high employee engagement correlated with stronger financial performance. And they had a couple of statistics. So it's nice kind of equation that they created: productivity times engagement equals performance. Drawing this link between financial performance and employee engagement. And they were saying that on average, each additional point of engagement reported by employees correlated with a $46,000 difference in market cap per employee. So there's some impressive statistics worth taking a look at this report, but basically kind of pulling out some data points to say, employee engagement, communications, and feedback, and acting on the feedback helps to generate good employee engagement, which will have an impact on financial performance.
Yeah, those are really good data points that you brought there. So I think we are in alignment that we need an intranet, right? And well, I'm pretty sure that we have been in alignment since we start talking, even before about that. Now let's talk about SharePoint, right? Focus on that part now. And when we are at events, and I have like the pleasure to be there with you very often. So you ask people 2 questions, right? So one is like, do you use SharePoint? And the other one is like, do you love SharePoint, right? So why do you do that?
Well, part of it is just, when you're at events and you're having those repetitive conversations over and over again, right? You're talking to potentially hundreds of people in the same day. You need a script to work from, right? And you need an icebreaker. And what I like about that icebreaker is that, generally the answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second question is almost never yes.
So not everyone is obsessed about SharePoint as we are.
Funny to admit that out loud, but yeah, I think people have a very mixed experience of SharePoint, and generally what you get in response to that second question is, no, I don't love it, and the range of responses goes from I absolutely hate using it, and anytime that I have to use it, I'm angry with the world generally, through to I accept this into my life, right? But I think what I liked about the question is introducing the idea that people could love SharePoint, right? Because underneath that resistance to it, I would say 50% of the people that I speak to have got an old impression of what SharePoint is like, right? And perhaps that's even conversations I've had recently as customers using the on-premises versions of SharePoint, right? And old versions of the on-premises versions of SharePoint. That so that is that is a tough situation if you find yourself in that position. Even people with more modern experiences, I think we were talking about this in the very first episode that we recorded, that in and of itself, it's not an intranet, right? It's a toolkit of stuff that somebody has got to put together. And if what you're using is a kind of out of the box, cobbled together by someone in IT as a hobby project, I can imagine that people are having a difficult experience there with search, analytics, branding. a lot of those things become pretty challenging. We were talking about that in that first episode.
Yeah, like I saw, I heard you, like, I was listening your webinar with Clarinet, like a partner of ours from the US, and you were saying there, like, there is no magic button that you can go and push that makes SharePoint an intranet, like functional with with the structure that you need.
You can do some stuff to it to improve it, but generally what you're going to need is a good chunk of experience and expertise. There's a reason that there is a thriving market out there for intranet products, because people want to spend time on the stuff that's going to add most value to employees. They don't want to spend time working out the right way to deploy content types into SharePoint.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like, by the way, like, when was like your first interaction with SharePoint?
So CMS 2002. When I joined the content and code business, and my main role in life was making sure that we were running good quality development projects to build websites for public sector organizations. I think it may have been like Westminster Council was my first experience of SharePoint. Probably not one to be revisited.
That's I was still at school, David. And well, my first interaction with SharePoint was in 2000.
The episode there.
Was in 2010. And it was a 2007 version. We were doing development like on top of 2007, and like the Intranet were in SharePoint 2010.
Yeah, well, that was the way, right? Until quite recently, to turn it into something useful, you had to do quite a lot of development work up front.
Yes, like definitely. And well, the good news, like, it has evolved like significantly, right? I mean, that's impressive. And we were talking before, like this episode here, like we don't need to go and look like 20, 15, 10 years ago, like just from 2024. 2024, 2023, how much it has changed. You gave like some good examples. Maybe you can repeat them here.
So, if you look at the product, the potential for the product this time next year, right, in 2026, that you've got the flexible layouts, making SharePoint pages work a bit more like something like WordPress, for example. You've got the AI functionality, creating agents on the fly in SharePoint, out of the box, in content, in lists and libraries, the brand center, fonts, and that is literally just in a 24-month period. So, if your last experiences with SharePoint were kind of, 2016 to 2020 even, this is a product that has evolved rapidly in a short space of time.
Yeah. So like really, like the past year, months, so much has happened in terms of page. So many improvements that have they applied there, like new web parts, new functionalities, as you mentioned. The experience has really evolved, and I mean, SharePoint is looking less like SharePoint as it evolves, right? Of course, solutions like ours also help like improve that, but the out of the box experience, especially like in terms of page, that's really it's beautiful, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Well, look, I think the sort of the guts of what we were going to talk about today was really kind of 5 key reasons that we think people should be revisiting SharePoint. And I think, the first of those is probably a pretty obvious one, and link back to that question that I asked people at the events, right? Is that people are already using this thing.
Yes.
In whatever guise the organization has it, for better or worse, people are experiencing SharePoint in most organizations now.
Yeah, that's so true.
And that's going to be SharePoint directly, or possibly Microsoft Teams, right? You're collaborating with your colleagues, you're running projects, you'll be using SharePoint files, folders, the system.
Yeah, people are not aware about that, but like so under each Microsoft Teams team, you have like a SharePoint side where like all of the documents that you upload, for example, into a channel, they will then be stored at the end of the day in the SharePoint that lives inside, like under the Teams. So you are using that, like, as you said, either directly or indirectly. And that's the fact, like, for many organizations out there, right? So
I think also increasingly we're seeing this kind of, a drive for people being either asked by their IT departments to come back and revisit SharePoint because their data lives somewhere else, right? They've got a third-party intranet product. The data is in some third-party software as a service cloud-hosted infrastructure. And the IT folks are trying to progress a strategy for consolidating IT systems, leveraging the investment that they're putting in Microsoft 365, perhaps new governance, regulation, legislation, that sort of stuff is driving them back into SharePoint. And what we're getting is people saying, we would like to maintain parity with our existing intranet, but we've got to get the data back into Microsoft 365.
Well, also in terms of reducing digital friction and also reducing costs, right? Because if we look at Microsoft 365, there are so many applications and services that it provides. If we take an example here outside of intranets, right? But if you look at Slack and Teams and Zoom and Teams, so we're not talking about the same features, but it's similar enough that it could justify kind of this consolidation that will at the end of the day help you reduce costs, right? And we see it we have similar discussions with clients as well. They have a SaaS intranet outside, SaaS intranet there outside of Microsoft 365, and they want to move to SharePoint because that's where IT is, and aligning then also here with this strategy of IT. I think you have a very good point there, when it comes to the comms team aligning their roadmap with the one from IT and from the CIO. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Well, and I think that this point about IT people are generally quite happy about this as a strategy because there is an existing investment going in the organization about security, identity, managing data. And, I think being able to leverage the investment that the organization is putting into Microsoft 365 and SharePoint already. And, that may be in some hidden ways, right? Things like people data, the investment in tidying up the people data is going to be of benefit to you in using the intranet for being able to drive things like personalization with groups and all that kind of stuff. And, often in organizations, there's a comms team of one person, right? They're doing all the work in internal comms. And, actually lining up your comms tech stack with the work that the IT team are doing, understanding their roadmap for Microsoft 365, what's being turned on, launched, licensed in the kind of coming weeks and months, and trying to build a partnership and alignment with that group may help you stop feeling like a team of one, right? Being able to have a buddy or buddies in the IT department that you can work with and kind of, make sure that you're linking all of your comms initiatives to stuff that they're doing, I think may make you feel like you're part of a bigger team.
Yeah, I mean, not just that, right? I think it's a win-win for both. From an IT point of view, you put a lot of effort in making, let's say, Microsoft 365 secure. I mean, by design, it comes with a lot of security in itself, but there's also a lot of configuration options that you can apply additionally, which IT usually goes there and do, right? So then you already have that in place. And that's a benefit that you get when you end up then with SharePoint as your intranet. That security kind of is inherited in SharePoint. That applies also multi-factor authentication. So that is there already. So you don't need to take care of that. So it's a beneficial then in this case.
And I think maybe the third benefit of doing this in SharePoint is that for better or worse, right or wrong, Microsoft do have a vision for employee experience. It may not always be 100% crystal clear what it is. It may at times seem like there's a lot of overlapping functionality in the applications that are available, but it is worth spending time listening to how they're talking about the vision for employee experience and then interpreting your own from that, right? There are a huge amount of applications and features and functionality available in Microsoft 365 that may not be immediately obvious to people. And having a good understanding of what's available there and having a good understanding of how Microsoft think that people should be using this stuff will help you build your own vision for digital employee experience on top of that.
Yeah, giving some more tangible examples, right? So, we have SharePoint where you can have your intranet, right? So your document management is happening there already.
Yeah.
You can extend that and have like a solid solution there with your intranet that connects everything. Then Teams, where a lot of the collaboration is already happening. So then the communication SharePoint, collaboration in Teams, and then your enterprise network, social network happening in Viva Engage. Kind of like those 3 examples that we see our clients also using, the Intranet and SharePoint and Engage and Teams, and the interplay between like those 3 solutions help build like the employee experience.
And I don't think anyone's saying that those things are all easy, right? There are some complex outcomes that are being driven there. It's not always as straightforward as bringing in some point solutions to deal with those things individually, but doing it, putting that a bit of extra effort and pain in to create this experience for people means that it is happening in a much more integrated way.
Yeah, and I think like good also about Microsoft 365 is that it comes with a lot of customization and integration extensibility options.
And I think that extensibility is, I guess the reason that we exist as a function, right? The only reason that we've been able to build Fresh in the first place and kind of fill any gaps in this world of intranet and create this intranet in a box experience people in SharePoint is because it is so extensible.
Yeah, it's like the Lego, right?
Yeah.
I like this idea of the building blocks.
Yes. Although I guess what it might feel like is, that box of Lego that you've got all of the bits and pieces that you've accumulated over the years, that you empty it out on the floor and you've got, hundreds or thousands of bricks in front of you, and you're not entirely sure what it is that you can build.
Maybe you are very creative. Like if you are like myself, right? So I'll go there. I'll always end up building the same things, David. It's always a house. It's always like a boring one. But yeah, all you end up, you go and you buy like a Lego set, right? So, and that comes with this one, by the way, is a quite nice one. Like, everyone is awesome. I think the message there is quite nice as well. But yes.
And the extensibility of Fresh means that, there are a collection of vendors out there that can produce those blueprints for you, right? That, they're building these solutions with referenceability, with templates, and just that, the extensibility of SharePoint and Microsoft 365, I think, is unparalleled in the industry. I would challenge anybody to find me something that is as extensible as SharePoint.
That's really good. Again, I mean, example, we deliver the Intranet in SharePoint, right? So, and it comes with a lot of functionalities and so on. And even that can be further extended. If you look at then the Power Platform, right? So you can create then Power Apps and integrate that even in the context of the Intranet. Or if you want like to automate some processes, and that goes beyond then that what is provided. So that could be done then with Power Automate. So no, what has been extended can then be further extended. Oh, that's a.
And there's we've got some episodes coming up with customer case studies, talking to people about how they're using SharePoint and Fresh and what it means in their organizations. And I think one of the things that I've really liked about having those conversations with people is uncovering those kind of hidden areas, right? That, you've got a team in the organization that's building Power Apps specifically for, business services or specific business requirements. Being able to just directly embed those things into the intranet immediately uplifts the value of the intranet. It makes a much nicer digital experience for everyone in the organization. And at least, one of those examples, the customer was saying to us that they had not realized that those skills existed in the organization previously, and suddenly, they had a kind of collaborator that they were working with in the intranet that were then able to build them some additional workflows to make distribution of information easier around the organization. And I just, I really like that idea that there are multiple people in the organization developing their skills in Microsoft 365 that can work together.
No, that's a really good point. So that's where IT also comes and can help further, right? So either you have like a partner, like a consultant partner that can help you and build that. But as you mentioned, so within the organization might be maybe someone from IT who can also like then help build those extensions for you that will really like provide a very a rich experience for your intranet.
And it does seem like we can't ever have a conversation without mentioning AI. So in order to try not to spend too long on this today, but it feels wrong to not mention this as a benefit, given the amount of investment that Microsoft are putting into Copilot.
That's true. Well, I mean, and the good thing is like, so Copilot exists in Microsoft 365, right? So you can use that like to ask questions that will then take information about all of your data, going like from Teams to Outlook. Maybe before I go there, like I'd like to highlight two benefits actually of Copilot, and I think those are basic things, but they are kind of amazing actually. So Copilot is integrated with your organizational data, right? So if you compare that with like ChatGPT, so that's a big difference, right? So ChatGPT is not integrating with the documents and Teams messages and your Outlook emails, right? So that Copilot does it. And the second thing that's also huge is like the enterprise data protection that Copilot has. So that means like all of the interactions that you have with Copilot, the prompts you enter, the queries you send, and so on, all of that is secure, right? So those are kind of basic, but like very important aspects of having AI in your platform.
And I was at an AI conference recently, and a lot of the people that I was speaking to at that conference were saying that one of the reasons that they weren't progressing AI initiatives in their kind of small comms departments is that they were worrying about this point about leaking data outside the organization, because a lot of the information that they're dealing with is quite sensitive. And saying to them, well, but look, you realize that you can use either the free Copilot that's in the browser, or if you have an organization license with Copilot, that data stays in your organization. And I was surprised that is not a point that is well understood by people. And I think increasingly, this kind of IT departments that are switching these technologies on are not necessarily highlighting the benefits and the use cases that people can get out of these technologies. It's a real shame. And I think if I'm in internal communications, working organization that's Microsoft 365, I would really be pushing to have a license for this thing and be spending time understanding it.
On this aspect, right? So I heard like from a consultant, a colleague of ours, that someone was mentioning that a client was taking, or someone was taking kind of then the documents then from the intranet and uploading that then like in ChatGPT, like, because then they could have like similar experience as they have with Copilot, right? But then you have this aspect like which you mentioned, right? So that data is then exposed maybe publicly, so you don't know like exactly how that gets handled. It doesn't provide this enterprise data protection that Copilot provides. Now, Copilot then so goes beyond just like being there over like all of the Microsoft 365 part. Microsoft is also integrating it now more deeply within applications. It has been like available across like Word and PowerPoint and so on, but now also coming then into SharePoint, right? So via SharePoint agents. And soon what we also like see is like then the option for creating SharePoint pages with Copilot.
And again, I think back to that kind of, the benefit for the internal communicator. This will make you be more strategic ultimately. If you're running your intranet in SharePoint, you're moving your content and data into Microsoft 365, that's where your content and information is. It is immediately accessible through Copilot to the entire organization. And lining up with that strategy means that you're getting the automatic benefits of all of the work that Microsoft are doing on AI. It's coming to SharePoint. It's in Word. It's in Outlook. It's in Teams. This is a good way of being able to say our internal comms function is now using generative AI.
So you are, as you said, you are really aligned there, like with your organization, right? So if your CIO is thinking of or adopting Copilot, so having then your intranet already in SharePoint will then add that additional benefit of having an AI already then like in your intranet, right? Regardless whether your software vendor provides that or not. So then you would have AI already by design, right, through Copilot.
And being provided by one of the biggest technology companies in the world,
who is like really doing a lot in that area. But maybe we stop here, right? Otherwise, we keep talking about AI for another.
We're going to turn it into another AI episode. Right, let's try and wrap this up into some conclusions. I don't know why that was so difficult for me to say. we were talking at the beginning about, you know, is there value in trying to identify if there are benefits in intranets? And I think, you know, you and I are both very clearly on the side of this shouldn't even be a question for people now.
Definitely. And I think so when it comes like to SharePoint, right? So if you have never tried it out, so maybe go there and give it a try, right? And maybe
it's free.
Yeah.
You'll be able to do it today.
Yes, it's like that. So, and especially if your organization has Microsoft 365, you're considering a new intranet, well, then consider also SharePoint as the place where your intranet can be.
Yes, and I think the caveat to that, as we said in that first episode, the intranet, you know, SharePoint is free, right? The licenses to use it, they'll already be in most organizations. It does not mean that setting it up as an intranet is free. There does need to be time, energy, additional software, effort, knowledge, expertise that's going to go into creating something that is a defined intranet, right? That's got some edges, some sides, some principles, some governance, a plan, you know, kind of cutting out that intranet workload in SharePoint has a tangible cost to it, internal and external.
Definitely. So that's it then. So the call to action for everyone today. So go there, give SharePoint a try. It's not as bad as you think. Reach out if you want like have a discussion around that.
If you want to love SharePoint, we want to talk to you.
That's amazing. Well, let's leave it here, David. That was profound.